Steven, let me just read through your bio really quickly, and then we can get into the conversation. So Steven Rothberg is the president and founder of collegerecruiter.com, the leading niche job board used by college and university students searching for internships and recent graduates hunting for entry-level jobs and other career opportunities. Collegerecruiter.com has 30,000 pages of content, 100,000 internship and entry-level job postings running at any given time, and 200,000 direct connections on social media sites such as Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Steven, welcome.
Thanks, Marty.
Great. Steven, what I thought we could first do is let me get a quick gauge from the room at where we're at from a social media perspective, just to give you a sense for the target audience of who you're talking to. And then we can focus in on what you see are the recruiting or social media recruiting trends for 2014. So with that said, how many folks know about what social media is? I'm assuming probably everybody in the room. That's a good thing. All right, how many folks are utilizing social media in their recruiting efforts at this very moment? Okay, so a goodly portion of the room is doing that, Steven. So just to give you a sense of where we're at in the room. So maybe what we could first focus in on is, what you see are the social media trends as they relate to recruiting in 2014.
Sure. Well, definitely the Minnesota Wild last night victory over the Chicago Blackhawks is just all over social media. You got to know your audience, right? So I think one of the big trends for employers in 2014 is going to be sort of a discovery of Google Plus. I'm not one of those Google Plus is everything to everybody. It's kind of a relatively new social media site launched by Google that's kind of a cross between Facebook and Twitter. But if you don't already have your Google Plus page set up, if you're not posting content to it, you should start not so much for an impact today, but maybe a year or 2 or 3 from now. Google is trying very, very hard to integrate its different offerings. Google Search, Gmail, the email program, Google Plus, YouTube is another big player, and we can talk about that too. But Google Plus sort of tries to pull all of that together, and then when Google's algorithms are determining which sites come up first in the search results, they're looking at stuff like Google Plus. So if you're on there early and you're on there well, they're going to deem your site to be more trustworthy, more reliable, and you'll come up higher in the search results. If a candidate is searching for an engineering job in Chicago and your page is not on the first page of the search results, then you may well not exist. Another big thing that I think is going to happen in 2014 with social media is that I think more and more recruiters, HR leaders that are enamored with it, that have been sold a bill of goods by consultants who make their living off of getting you onto social media, will realize that it's an important tool, but it's just one of many tools in your toolbox. The expression, you can't build a house just with a hammer. You need the hammer, but you also need a lot of other tools.
Wonderful. And just I guess a quick question. Is there anybody out there right now that's actually using Google Plus in their efforts? All right. Looks like we have a couple of folks in the room that are currently using it. All right. Well, maybe the next thing to do is, since it seems like everyone's pretty comfortable with the terminology of social media, do you just want to maybe briefly define it from your sense and what you think it means, just again, so we're all operating on the same level field?
Sure. It's almost easier to give examples of sort of what is and what is not social media. I think there are a lot of different good definitions out there, but very clearly sites like Twitter, Facebook, and parts of LinkedIn, Google Plus are examples of social media sites. For those of us, as they say, of a certain age, we also might remember sites like Friendster and MySpace. Amazingly, those sites actually still exist. If you've got a rock band, you want to be on MySpace. If you are an employer, you want to have a page on Facebook. The social media sites allow people to share content online and interact with their friends, with their connections, with their colleagues, with potential employees. LinkedIn is probably the leading site for employment, for employers using social media, but posting a job to LinkedIn is not using social media. Posting a job to LinkedIn is no different than posting a job to CareerBuilder or Monster or College Recruiter or any other job board. So LinkedIn, I feel, sort of has two sides to it. There's sort of the job board side where you post jobs, candidates can search them. If you're looking at people's profiles and then messaging them using what they call InMail, that's really no different than resume searching on a job board. But where you're actually contributing content, posting articles, answering people's questions, asking one person to connect you with another person, those are excellent examples of the social media side of LinkedIn.
Gotcha. So it sounds like from the analogy that you were using before about, using a hammer, you probably want to have a mix, I would think, within social media. So again, what are some of those sites? How are they maybe best utilized for each of their strengths and to make the most effective mix, if you will, for a recruiter?
Sure. Well, on Facebook, you definitely want to have a page on Facebook that describes your organization, has your logo, has some about us type information. And then I would assign at least one person in your organization to check that page at least one time a day. Probably 3-4 years ago, I had a conversation with Dan Black, who at the time was in charge of global college relations for EY, Ernst & Young. He's now been promoted to be in charge of all of recruiting for the Americas, North and South America. But although he had obviously a very, very big job, he was sort of the primary person at EY, and he would answer questions, direct people who were posting comments, questions, whatever, to their Facebook page. And he told me it took him maybe 5 to 10 minutes a day. So, rather than going out for a smoke, he would check Facebook and get paid for it. That I think a lot of recruiters and HR leaders overestimate the amount of time it takes to properly engage on a site like Facebook. If you're getting hundreds of candidates a day interacting with you, asking questions, whatever, you should be so lucky. The reality is most of us are just not all that interesting, and the candidates just aren't going to post a lot of stuff there. But they will read your articles, they will come and do some research, and they're going to kind of lurk. And I mean lurk in a healthy, positive way, not like the guy like looking in your windows at night. Another site that just about every employer should be on is Twitter. There are two schools of thought on Twitter. One is sort of the low quantity, high quality. So only follow people that are real and that you actually know or that you care about. And you only want people following you who are like watching what you're saying, reading your content, etc., that are well targeted. That's fine. That allows you to really engage with those people because it's a smaller group of people. Then there's the other group where it's like the more the merrier. Massive quantity, and that's kind of more of a public relations strategy where you're getting your message out to a lot of people. So you're not touching them deeply, but you are touching a lot of them. That's what we do. We have two different accounts. At Steven Rothberg and at Entry Level Job. Between the two of them, we have over 200,000 Twitter followers. Clearly, we are not interacting in any deep fashion with any one of those people. It's more of a public relations broadcasting mechanism for us. Where we do a lot of interaction and real interaction with real people is on Facebook and also LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn group. They're free. If you don't have one, start one. We've got something like 19,000 members of our group. We post articles, jobs, answer questions, allow other people to post content. It's basically a really big community for people who are interested in raising the bar on college and university relations. They can be job seekers, they can be employers, career counselors, etc. For the folks in your room, if they're working for XYZ Corporation, I would urge them not to create a group about XYZ Corporation. But if they're in Aurora and they are looking for engineers, I would urge them to create a group about engineering in Aurora, because that is going to be far more interesting to far more people than XYZ Corporation's job opportunities. You can post those jobs to LinkedIn, your site, job boards, whatever. That's not what a group is for. A group is for conversation.
Great. And it just to quickly summarize, it really seems that the key thing with social media is that it's all about interaction rather than the traditional forms of media where you're just pushing out information. It's all about engaging those individuals so that they engage with you. And the form that will take will need to vary by each one of those mediums, those vehicles that you just referenced, be it Twitter, Facebook, etc. So great. We've got a couple more minutes before we need to segue to the panel. What I was hoping to do, is there any question maybe from the audience that they would like to pose to Steven? Hold on, let me walk this over that way.
Hi, my name is Ashley. I'm a recruiting director with Burson Marsteller, a PR agency, and one of the things I'm tasked with this year is to really improve our social media efforts and our reputation and visibility on a lot of the sites you mentioned. A question I have is it ever appropriate to start a campaign internally where you're reaching out to your superstars, your internal employee brand advocates, and asking them to go to places like Glassdoor and post the wonderful things that they enjoy about the company? Is that ever appropriate to actually ask people to do that? You know, we're busy doing our jobs, you forget about it. Sometimes those sites are only for people who are disgruntled.
Yeah.
So is it ever a good idea to actually advocate positive things on those sites?
Yeah, and I think the short answer is yes, and I'm also really glad that you mentioned Glassdoor. Glassdoor is essentially a social media job board where they have job listings for a ton of different organizations. We have a partnership with them. We put their content on our site, and it's really great because it has reviews from actual real employees and former employees. And there's a misconception out there about Glassdoor that it's just all negative stuff and that the people just go out there and trash your CEO and whatever. But Glassdoor's rule right from day one is if you're going to post something negative, you also have to post something positive. So there's some balance there. And interestingly, you can post something positive without having to post something negative. So maybe there's the glass half full needs to be 3/4 full kind of attitude. But to answer your question directly, yes, Glassdoor actually encourages employers to get their employees, their rock stars and others, to go to Glassdoor and post content. And I think that same would apply elsewhere. Where I think you have to be careful is a lot of employees just do not feel comfortable being on social media or being on social media in a professional way. So it's, when your boss comes to you and encourages you to post information to LinkedIn, Glassdoor, whatever, even though it may not be a job requirement, even though the boss knows that there's not going to be any negative repercussions if the employee chooses not to, there's definitely pressure there. And I think you just have to make it very obvious and very real to the employees that this is something that would be wonderful, not at all required, no harm. And I think that maybe just goes to the relationship that the employer has with its employees. If the employees really trust the employer and they know that what the employer says is true, then I think they're going to be more likely to say, sure, I'll post, or you know what, I'm going to opt out of that. But when the relationship is not real trusting, that's going to create a problem with that employee being willing to post content, and probably it's also going to create a problem with the content because they're probably not going to be as willing to review your CEO in ravishingly favorable language.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to thank you, Steven, for being a part of this. We need to segue onto our panel now, so thank you very much. Much
Thank you.
appreciated. And so I'm going to go ahead and minimize you now so that we, you can still be a part of the room, but we can bring our panel up.
Sounds great. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you. All right. So Megan, Nikki, Dustin, Alicia, Brock, if you guys can come on up, that would be wonderful.